Hello guys, today we will be solving this equation, by completing the square. So, completing the square is a method for solving quadratic equations. It's called completing the square because we're going to have to eventually take the square root of this number of x squared to make it just x. The first thing I'm going to do to solve this equation, so this equation, it already has the constant, which is the number without the variable, on the right side. So we don't have to move it over. But if this was x squared plus 4x minus 2 equals 0, then we would have to move the constant from this side to this side. But this problem already did it for us. So I'm going to first rewrite the problem. X squared plus 4x. Now notice I'm going to leave a blank here because there's going to be a new constant, and that's part of completing the square. Equals 2. But what you have to do on this side, you also have to do on this side. So I'm going to put a blank here. And some people like to put a plus sign or a minus sign, but I don't really like to do that because you don't know if it's going to be plus or minus, and it's not both. So it's not a plus minus. It's going to be adding or subtracting depending on what it is. But anyway, this is let me get another color. Leading coefficient is 1. If it's just like x squared, it's always going to be 1. If it's negative x squared, it's going to be negative 1. This one is 4. So this is B. And then remember, this is C because it's the constant. C for constant. Constant meaning it has no x. So what we have to do for completing the square is we have to divide B by 2. Now we bring down the x, so it's x, and then 4 divided by 2 is positive 2. But since we're like basically factoring here, you write it twice because this has to equal this. So now, remember we have this blank here and this blank here. This is going to be the same number, but we have to do it by using these two numbers. So I like to draw a little spout. And then you have to multiply these, because remember, when we're factoring, you do what adds to equal B and multiplies, like the circle, to equal C. Whoops. So 2 and 2 add to equal 4. 2 and 2 multiply to equal also 4 in this case. So we're going to add plus 4 on both sides. And I like to draw a line to separate each side. So, okay, if this is x plus 2 times x plus 2, that's just the same thing twice. So we can do x plus 2 squared because it's just the same thing. So this side, 2 plus 4, that's 6. If you didn't know that, just use your calculator. Now this is where some people get confused. Some people think they can leave their answer as this. Not for completing the square. You cannot leave your answer like this. What you have to do is you have to take the square root of both sides to cancel out the 2. And let me teach you a little hack. So x to the 1/2 power is the same thing as taking the square root of x. So why does this cancel out? Well, because if you remember, x to the first power is just whatever x was. And then, so if we have x squared, we're taking the square root, that means we're doing 1/2 times 2, which just equals, x, or x1, which is just x. So let me get this out of the way. But back to this. This cancels out the exponent 2. We have to take the square root of 6. So let me get my different color. All this cancels out. And you can even drop the parentheses because nothing before it or after it. It's just that left on this side. So x plus 2 equals, okay, so since we did the square root on this side, you have to add a plus minus in front of it. That's just something you have to know to do. I'm not sure how to explain it. You just have to do it. So now we have x plus 2 on the side. So we're going to do minus 2. And this is the addition property of equality. Minus 2 on the side. Okay, so this crosses out. So now we just have this x, which is what we're trying to find. We're trying to solve the following by completing the square. They didn't say solve for x, but that's what they mean by solve the following by completing the square. So, because we're trying to find the x-intercepts. So let me just show you. So this problem was x squared plus 4x, and if we put the 2 on the side, it would be negative 2. So when we graph it, we see that the zeros or the x-intercepts are around there and around there, which is what we're trying to find. We're trying to find the x-intercepts. So x equals, okay, and this is another thing. This number always goes in front of this number. Negative 2 plus minus square root of 6. Can this be simplified? Let's see. Find two things that multiply to equal to that. Can these be simplified? No. So this is in its simplest form here. So now the problem said solve the following by completing the square. It said solve the following by completing the square, but it didn't specify if you had to leave your answer in simplest radical form or if you had to round to the nearest whatever. So since it didn't specify, you can leave your answer as x equals this as long as it has a plus minus in it. So right here is our answer. And remember, this is the same thing as x equals negative 2 plus this, and then you can write and or x equals negative 2 minus. This means we're doing plus and minus in two different equations. So I made a little bit of a mess, but it's okay. So that is completing the square. Actually, I don't think we used a calculator, so with no calculator. So yeah, I hope you learned a thing or two.